So aside from growing chefs, which she founded a few years ago, she's also a pastry chef, and she was working up on the island, and now she's running a chocolate roastery, kind of a cacao roastery, coffee bean roastery in Gastown. My two loves, coffee and chocolate. So it all kind of is full circle, and I want to welcome Chef Merri Schwartz.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. So first of all, I should say that I'm pretty awed to be here tonight because unlike some of the other women, I'm relatively early on into my career. I've been doing this for about 11 years, which in the food industry actually makes me a bit of a veteran because people drop like flies. But I still feel like in some ways I, have something less to say because my experiences are obviously different from some of these amazing women. But I will tell you a little bit about what I've been fortunate enough to do. So, like I said, I've been a pastry chef for about 11 years, and I've had an incredibly packed, brilliant, amazing career in that time. I've been lucky enough to work in, mostly in fine dining in Vancouver, worked with some amazing people, had some mentors, including the amazing Andrea Carlson, Robert Clark, Robert Belcham, people that have just changed the way I live and, of course, the way I work. And I really, really want to tell you about what I'm doing right now, which is running a bean-to-bar chocolate shop and social enterprise in the downtown east side. However, unlike some of the other women who've spoken tonight, I'm not so in love with being in the industry right now, mainly because we opened 6 weeks ago, and I am completely exhausted. Any new business is brutal, the food industry is brutal, and right now I'm just like, I don't even know how I'm gonna do another day, And so actually being here tonight and listening to some of the stories has been a really good reminder about why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I'm actually really glad to have come just for that reason alone. So I do have to tell you a little bit about growing chefs because I was, cautioned very severely by our executive director that I had to mention it, and it was not okay if I spoke about my career without talking about growing chefs. So just to go back a little bit about myself, I'm the child of back to the land hippies, and when I say hippies, I mean true hippies. So I was born in a cabin in the middle of the woods in the Kootenays, living with no electricity, no hot water. My parents had gone there 10 years earlier, immigrated from the States, from a commune there, to go back to the land, growing their own food. I mean, they knocked down trees, cleared the land, built themselves a log cabin, and they lived there for about a decade, just living simply with bees, chickens, gardening, just trying to live as naturally and simply as possible. So people think it's quite shocking and funny that I became a pastry chef because I was raised obviously without sugar. I, no word of a lie, had gone away to Toronto to go to university. I was 19 and I moved home for the summer. I'd already been living away for a year and I bought my family's first bag of sugar. There had never been sugar in the house and it was a huge deal. My mom just about lost her mind. So the fact that I became a pastry chef seems ironic, but in reality, growing up in that kind of environment, you make everything. I mean, we grew our own food, we canned our own food, we made our own bread. There was nothing that seemed impossible to make, and so this whole idea of making food came very naturally to me. And of course, I was also lucky enough to grow up in an environment where we lived very closely to the food that we ate. So I had gotten into pastry and was working in fine dining. I'd been doing it for a few years, and I was becoming very aware of how much amazing knowledge there was in kitchens, and I was working with Robert Clark at the time, who was, sourcing, farmers would be coming to our back door and fishermen would be coming, and I mean, it was just this exciting, brilliant, amazing world to be in, and there was so much knowledge about food sustainability and local food systems and nutrition and agriculture, but you either had to be lucky enough to be wealthy enough to walk into the restaurant and enjoy the food, or you had to work in the kitchen, and there was just no way to get that knowledge out into the community. So I was looking around for an opportunity to volunteer to do that myself, and I couldn't find anything, so I thought, well, I guess I might as well do something, on my own. So I started a little pilot project with a couple chef friends where we paired up with an elementary school, and we started going into the classroom to teach the kids to grow and cook their own food. So We went in the first week and we just planted little windowsill vegetable gardens with the kids, just got their hands in the dirt, got them really excited. And we went back every 2 weeks over the course of 3.5 months, working with them, doing different lessons about nutrition, tasting, foods around the world, whatever it was. And towards the end of the program, when we got some things growing, we did some little cooking classes with them. So just to take them through how amazing it feels to plant something and nurture it and then eat it. I mean, there's literally nothing more empowering in the world, for me anyway. And it took off, and more chefs wanted to volunteer, and more teachers wanted the program. And before long, I was working, full-time as a pastry chef, which is time and a half, if not 2 times as much as your normal work week, and running this nonprofit organization that just took off. And 3 years ago, we hired a proper executive director who runs things the way they should be run. We've got about 100 chef volunteers. We are in 34 schools right now in the Lower Mainland, in Comox, in Kelowna this year. We've been doing an Okanagan pilot. We have a sister project in Ontario, and it's just been an incredible experience. Happened to me completely by accident. But of course, it's an amazingly rewarding experience to have as well. And obviously, we do this program to teach kids about sustainability and empower them and help them learn to cook and connect to their food. But for me, almost the more important aspect is working within the chef community to empower chefs, because, I'm sure it doesn't come as a surprise to anyone here tonight that being a chef is a really weird way to live. I mean, you work weird hours and you don't see the rest of the world, and you're cut and burned, and you don't interact with people very much. And yet there's so much important knowledge in that community. And when I see these cooks, and these chefs who join our volunteer teams, and they go out into the schools, and all of a sudden they realize, I'm really important. I have something really important to teach people. And it's an amazing transformation to watch the chefs going through that experience. So for me, that's been the most rewarding part, probably, of growing chefs. And it's something I can be really, happy to have been involved with. But not something I set out to do intentionally. It's just one of those things that snowballed. It was there at the right time, and people really embraced it. And so, unlike some of the more recent speakers, my education in the culinary world has been somewhat traditional. It was really harsh. I, started sweating my butt off in kitchens and working 12 hours a day, and the normal thing, never eating, being abused and, just intimidated and whatever it is. And, it's a really difficult experience, but also, if you love it, the most rewarding experience in the world. So, most recently, I was invited to come on board as the chocolatier for a new bean-to-bar chocolate shop opening, which is already exciting enough, because I don't know if any of you know about how chocolate's made, but of course it comes from the cacao tree, and cacao is grown in many countries around the world close to the equator. The fruit is harvested, cracked open, and the pulp inside is fermented for 3 or 4 days, and then that fruit is dried either in the sun or on the jungle floor. And the center of that fruit, the beans, the cacao beans, is what chocolate's made from. But here in Canada, we've almost never had the opportunity to make chocolate from bean. When I went to pastry school, my textbook literally said, we buy our chocolate from manufacturers in Italy, Switzerland, France, or Belgium, and we turn it into confections in Canada. So the opportunity to be able to roast cacao, shell cacao, and make chocolate from the bean is just blowing my mind. It's unbelievable. So we have this amazing little chocolate shop and coffee roaster you could call it Castan, you could call it the Downtown East Side. So that is amazing. But the other amazing part about this business is that it's a social enterprise. So it's actually a project of the PHS Community Services Society, which some of you might know as the Portland Hotel Society, which has recently changed its name. So they are an amazing organization focused on harm reduction in the Downtown East Side. They run 19 different residences, everything from supportive housing, single room occupancy, palliative care, addictions treatment. They, along with Vancouver Coastal Health, were the founders and run Insight, the safe injection site. They have many health outreach programs, dental care. Their reach in that neighborhood goes so far. They run overnight toilets, like anything that people need there, they do their best to provide. And one of the things they've been focused on in the last few years is social enterprise, because one of the big things that's lacking in that neighborhood is dignified and rewarding employment. I mean, if you do manage to get out of your addiction and change the way you're living, usually the only work available to you is janitorial or laundry, or it's the work no one else wants to do. So the PHS has been trying to open businesses in that neighborhood to give people a rewarding, dignified way to get back into the workforce. So we have a community art shop, we have a couple thrift stores, there's a PHS urban farm on Hastings. We do have a laundry service and a janitorial service and a pest control and those kinds of things. But one of the ideas of the directors of the PHS was to open a bean to bar chocolate shop, which is kind of crazy to do in the beginning, and then especially to do in that neighborhood. But they've gone ahead and done it. So we employ women who live upstairs in the Rainier Hotel. And almost all of them are in some stage of addictions management. And it's an amazing but very, very challenging atmosphere to work in. And it's funny coming from the food industry. I mean, I like to think of myself as a really compassionate, patient, loving person. But I've realized in the last few months since I've been doing this job that I've been trained to be pretty hardcore, actually. And when I'm at work and I see somebody doing something improperly, or it's a mess, or they're not cleaning up after themselves, my instinct is to really get on them, because that's what we do in kitchens. I mean, we really bring the hammer down. I want to say, why is that rag there? What are you doing? Get that to the dish pit. Do that faster. We don't have all day. The way I've been trained and the way I will, have sometimes worked with staff in the past. And in this situation, obviously, I'm there to be compassionate and just give these women an opportunity to come to work. I mean, for a lot of them who have been out of the workforce for maybe 10 years, showing up to 3 out of 4 shifts in a week is a huge accomplishment. At the moment, we are hand shelling all the cacao, which is a huge job because it takes 22 kilos of cacao to make 30 kilos of chocolate, which is 1 batch in our grinder. But it's a very therapeutic job for someone who needs to focus, needs to calm their mind, needs to sit somewhere and be able to do work for 3 or 4 hours at a time without a huge amount of pressure. So until now, we've made that decision. So most of the women come in and they shell the cacao. Some of the women are learning to work on the cash and work on the coffee bar. And it's been a very challenging but amazing experience for me, and definitely coming from the food industry, the first time that I've worked in an all-female environment. And we made that decision early on because a lot of the women come from a background where they might not feel safe in everybody's company. They might come from the sex trade, or they might have come from abusive situations. And we decided there were a lot of men that were really interested in working with us, but we decided to keep it women only. We have a roaster, a master coffee roaster, who comes in to help out. He comes in on a day that the shop is closed because we just decided to keep it as safe as possible. So today, actually, before I came here, I asked some of the women if they enjoyed working in that environment more than being in other environments they've been in, and they all said no, they didn't really care or whatever. Which, who knows what the best thing to do is. But it's a very different environment for me, and I'm working hard to just be as compassionate and supportive as I can. And on the other hand, we're trying to make the best chocolate in Vancouver, and I think we're succeeding because eating chocolate that was came off the grinder a few days earlier is an amazing, amazing experience. So I mean, I don't know where my story is going. Just that there's always levels of self-discovery in every stage of your life experience in your career. And right now I'm realizing that the industry that trained me had taken me potentially in a direction that wasn't as healthy as I had thought it was. I thought I learned to just be a really hard worker and a really productive worker and put my head down and do my best. But I'm coming back now through my experiences at East Van Roasters to approaching making food with a more loving heart and, just trying to bring compassion to food in a way that sometimes gets lost in, I guess, the bigger industry. So I think that's what I've got to say. But thanks for having me out.